So today we have an interesting one, Michael Rowland. From what I've gathered from looking through his channel, he seems to be a self-proclaimed feminist, and today he's trying to say we have gender wrong. So let us dive into this, shall we?
Hi. So, I don't understand why people have a problem with the idea of multiple genders or sexes. Firstly, it confuses me as an appreciator of science. Back in the day when I used to argue all the time with creationists online, it always used to baffle me the ridiculous amount of black and white thinking that these people would employ. But science shows us that the universe is not a black and white place. It's a crazy, diverse place full of strange and wonderful things that don't always conform to neat little boxes. That's why, for example, the tree of life is so complicated and continues to get more complicated the more we discover about the world. The deeper we look into the philology of these things, the deeper we go, the more we see that the world doesn't fit into tiny, neat little boxes.
Okay, so a number of things to unpack here. You start off rambling about how things don't fit into neat little boxes, and go on about how the universe isn't like that. The thing is, there's a difference between the universe and biology, as we figured out the second one for the most part and are still looking into the first one. And what was with that tangent about the tree of life? You do realize that there is no physical tree of life, right? That it's a part of mythology. The part that makes me scratch my head the most is you going on about philology, which is the branch of knowledge that deals with the structure, historical developments, and relationship of a language or languages. That would make more sense if you were talking about other such sciences like biology, but your statement is that the more we learn about the languages, the more we'll find out about the race of the world.
So why is it then that people have such a hard time accepting that maybe, just maybe, our ideas about gender and sex aren't perfect? That maybe our simplistic binary view of something as complicated as personal identity might not be as cut and dry as we think it is.
Wait, you're trying to say that society looks at both sex and gender as binary? Not touching the physical part right now, as that it will be for the rest of the video. But gender? How someone identifies themselves? There's not a one or the other type of thing. Yeah, there are male and female, but you're ignoring bigender, people who feel they are both male and female at once. Along the same line, there's androgens, which is an unequal amount of the mixed gender. Then there are some of the more esoteric ones. People like me, who are gender fluid, where we feel our gender changes as we feel it, and there's agender, where someone doesn't recognize having a gender at all.
How could it be that someone is perfectly willing to accept that the universe is this amazing, beautiful, complex, mysterious place full of grey areas and weird shit that makes no sense, but then as soon as we talk about biological sex, nope, we got that perfectly right and there's only two?
Do you know when we started studying biology? That was back in the 3rd century, over 2 millennium ago. Granted, the research was not very well done, but it was still research. It's easier to break down biology than physics, especially since the smaller things get, the less physics follows its own rules.
And did you know that there are more than 2 different karyotypes? A karyotype is a picture of a person's set of chromosomes, and I was always under the impression that these manifest in only 2 ways, XX and XY, male and female. Wrong. The 6 most common ways that these manifest are X, XX, XXY, XY, XYY, and XXXY. Man, who knew that human biology could be so complicated and not at all black and white?
Yet when people look at the biology of these people during surgery, they tend to be along the same lines, so it does kind of fit into a third neat little box.
I've also heard people acknowledge that intersex people exist, but they don't count that as a separate sex. I mean, what? What?
Hey dumbass, the term you're thinking about is the word hermaphrodite, a word that means the same thing as intersexed.
You acknowledge that there are people who exist whose biology doesn't align with a strict binary, but that doesn't count as a different sex because reasons. That's like saying, yes, I know that there are multiple different flavors of chocolate, but the only real flavors are 70% cocoa and almond. All those other ones, they don't count. No, they are all flavors, and they're all as equally as legitimate as each other, and your opinions don't factor in the matter. Except for orange-flavored chocolate. Fuck that shit.
Wow, it's almost like you're saying that we have to stay objective about these things, and then being subjective about what counts. And for the political joke, Well, there's a simple thing. Call the tinfoil hatters! It seems that we have an alien president!
Secondly, it confuses me as a lover of language. Constant objections I often hear are things like, these people are just making up a bunch of words. They're using words how they're not supposed to be used. 64 pronouns, that's too many! If we allow this to happen, what's going to stop people from identifying as tractors and fairies and dragons and shit? And these are, of course, super silly objections.
So something that was brought up to me in post. Are you saying that the arguments are silly because they should be able to identify however they want, or because people wouldn't identify themselves as that? If it's the former, then I'm in total agreement. But if you're talking in the latter, then you should be aware that there are people who already do that. There are people who identify as fairies, dragons, wolves, stuff like that.
For one, all words are made up. There are no words that exist as omnipresent beings outside the existence of humanity. Words exist because of us. So what is wrong with making up some new words to describe new things that we don't yet have words for? As we learn and discover more about the world, we're going to need new words to describe those new things that we discover. I don't see people complaining about scientists always making up new words to describe new species of animals. But the words aren't coming about naturally, meh. Who cares? If there is a thing that needs a word to describe it, then why not make up a new word for that thing? Why does it matter if it hasn't come about through years of language evolution or some bullshit?
Considering your mention of a loving language and that you actually knew what philology was, I find it strange that you're saying we should screw the history of language and change everything simply because you want it to. If society wanted the words to change, it would have over time already. Anyways, for the rest of the video, you basically just accuse people of being conformists for an issue that doesn't exist, so final thoughts. Your video reeks of you trying to be offended on behalf of a minority that you are not a part of, and yes, they are a minority. If you did the slightest bit of research into the subject, you would know that the amount of people who are born like this is minuscule. Like 1 in every 2,000 births are actually like this. Adding your condescending tone, it will just end up feeling like you're ranting about something that you have little to no knowledge of and trying to demean others for their beliefs about the limits of human physiology.